What is going on, my fellow Summit Chasers? Thank you so much for being here again on this beautiful Thursday for another episode of the Summit Success Series. We have a very special guest today. She's actually somebody who we had on the podcast. It hasn't released yet. It's actually due to release this coming week. Her name's Keri-Lynne Shaw. Very excited to talk to her about this topic. And it's something that I guess that she has been working on herself, is identifying where she puts her energy, when and this is for a lot of people, that's why we're having this conversation, but when you should be practicing and leaning into the hustle culture, to the grit, and just pushing forward, hitting your head against the wall. Sometimes you have to, right? But when do you stop? When does that become more of a detriment than it is something that's actually pushing you forwards, that's helping you guide you on the path of success? And it's very, again, if you scroll through LinkedIn, if you scroll through, any social media platform, you can look up great quotes from some amazing people that have done amazing things. It points towards kind of the directionless focus on just try harder, just do more, just wake up earlier, do more burpees. She told me a story how she was at a retreat, and somebody said that he was boasting about doing burpees until he puked. But when is that, even in fitness, when is that good and when is that a detriment? So I'm very excited to kind of dive into that and to kind of talk through it with her, and kind of where do you draw that line, and then how do you recognize when you're getting closer to that line, and then when do you kind of step back and reassess the situation and your strategy. But really quickly, before I introduce her to the stage, we're coming up on the Young Professionals Leadership Summit. Time flies. It is absolutely crazy. I remember when we first partnered to put on this event, it was we were thinking like, okay, we got like 7 or 8 months, we got a lot of planning to do, but we got time, and it was just kind of like it was conceptual how we were going to pull it kind of off. And then incrementally, as it sort of came together, we had the speakers, we had the space, we have seats that are filled now. It's absolutely crazy. It's so amazing how it's come together, and even the speakers that we have, how they've come together and help us put this event on, and how they've helped us shape it, and how they've helped us get the most amount of value out of the people that are going to be there. But that's the Young Professionals Leadership Summit. It's October 19th. So again, only a few weeks away, in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Now, I know it's last minute. If you still want to make it, but you're not in Toronto, totally fine. We have a virtual option, and they're priced for wherever you are at in your leadership journey. If you're somebody who's wondering if they even want to move into that leadership position, maybe you're an individual contributor right now, and you're like, I don't know where I want to take my career path. I know I want to move into management, but I don't know what that looks like. Am I cut out for it? What does it mean to be a leader? And then how do you become successful at being a leader for other people, for giving other people a path to success, and not just focusing on your own? So it's $60 for in-person tickets. And I think we do have a few seats left in person. And then obviously the virtual, it's unlimited. And there's, I think those are $20 a ticket, I believe. But you can go to YPLSUMMIT, that is YPLSummit.com, to go and get your tickets. And you can learn more about the speakers and some of the great sponsors that we have that are going to be there as well. So we're very, very excited about that. So YPLSummit.com, get your tickets. The other exciting news that we have is we are launching our 5-day strategy core challenge. That is going to be coming up October 22nd. Everybody thinks I'm crazy that I'm putting on this event, and then we're doing our first cohort for this challenge 3 days later, but I kind of like that. I kind of like it. And we're very excited about this. This is something that's actually we put together due to very popular demand, because this is something that we do with our clients, and we've done within their businesses. And we've done some small groups of it as well, which is creating what we call a strategy core. It's a guiding policy, it's a guiding principle, it's a guiding North Star that you utilize to help you bring clarity to the decisions and the strategic decisions that you're making. There's so many businesses and business owners and founders out there that feel like they're just running into a wall. Speaking of just try harder, they've tried that strategy for too long. Just try harder, just do more, and they're running their head against the wall, and they're hitting that plateau, they're hitting that ceiling, and they're not sure why. All these decisions that you're making, all these tactics that you're throwing against the wall and hoping that something sticks, just aren't working out. And you need to change. You need clarity. Where do you put your resources? What decisions do I make? What markets do I play in? Are we even competing in the right market right now? This will be 5 days. It will be an intense challenge. And when I say intense, I mean that we'll be challenging you. You'll be challenging each other. We're leaving it. We're going to max it out at only 10 people per week, so per 5 days, and you're going to be in breakout rooms, challenging each other, sharing your ideas, and really looking at your business from a different perspective. We're gonna kind of force you and get you into a state where you're going to be looking at things a little bit differently, and you're going to be much more clear on your strategic decisions moving forward, and bring a much higher sense of clarity and focus to your decisions as you move forward. So very, very excited about that. So I'll have a link. Boom. Oh, who's there? Oh, Enrique. I didn't look at the comments. Enrique, how's it going, dude? Thank you for being here. So I put a link in the comments there. You can check that out. Adrena, if you're here, if you're still here, can you put that link? Make sure it's in LinkedIn as well. Make sure the link is in LinkedIn so everybody can go check it out. Again, it's October 22nd to the 26th. It's Tuesday to Friday, 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And then the last day will be on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Almost said p.m. 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on Saturday. So again, we're very excited about that. Check out the link, learn more about it, and make sure you sign up because this first one's going to be at a special rate because, again, it's going to be our first one. We're going to be learning. So make sure you get in on this first one if you can. But anyways, I'm almost out of breath, so I need somebody to help me out. And I think I have the perfect person who's ready backstage. I can see her smiling, but I'm very excited to dive into this topic of when is the hustle more of a detriment? When is it a key? And how do you kind of reassess if you're on the right path, if you're focusing on the right things, and if you're in I just need to try harder to, I need to step back and refocus. So welcome to the stage, Keri-Lynne Shaw.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Are you sick of me yet? You were just on our podcast like 2 days ago.
You told me I might get sick of you, but so far, so good. I'm good.
So far, so good. Beautiful. Yeah. Well, again, your podcast is coming out Tuesday of next week.
Great.
So everybody will get to know you very well then. But in 30 seconds, can tell everybody a little bit about you because you have an amazing background. You're extremely knowledgeable and you have some amazing experience. So give everybody like a 30-second to a minute kind of rundown on who you are.
30 seconds, Zach. Do you know me? I mean, that's impossible.
Maybe 90 seconds.
A 30-second rundown. Well, we're fellow Canadians. So when I met Audrina and you, of course, that was a perfect link. And I know where you're from, which is also very unusual. So there was that win. My background, I spent 30 years in corporate. I had a phenomenal run and never thought in a million years I would become an entrepreneur, and realized that I'm a learner. I love to grow and constantly challenge myself. And I thought, I'm going to give this a go and take everything that I've learned 30 years in mostly automotive, but a little beauty, a little fashion, a little home, and take that. And I suppose the point of it is all of that experience has given me this opportunity and this platform to be able to share with the world. I spent about a decade in HR. I left corporate as a chief people officer, and there's a lot of unknowns behind that door of HR. And I started a company to sort of blow the doors off of that and put employees in the driver's seat of navigating their career. It ends up bleeding into their life and, all that good stuff, but specifically navigating their career and helping them know their value and their worth, and getting the salary packages to go with it. Because I know I left a lot of money on the table over my career, and I know less than 50% of people are negotiating, less than 30% of women are negotiating, and you're leaving between $1 million and $1.5 million on the table over your career. And I decided I wanted to do something about that. So I guess the 30 years experience brought me to this point. I wouldn't have been able to do this sooner. So I hope that got me in the 90 seconds.
No, that was beautifully done. And your company is the salary bump.
Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah, we'll make sure that we link that as well. It's amazing what you're doing, and it's kind of plays really well. Well, first of all, your own focus, because one thing that you had mentioned on your podcast, on our podcast when you were on, was you kind of got thrown into some of these roles like HR. You're kind of like, yeah, I haven't been in HR. I know what it is, so I guess I'm going to figure it out itself. So what would you say about kind of individuals jumping into the unknown, and where do they start when they're trying to figure out something that is completely not within their current wheelhouse, especially when they're they're in a corporation, they're in a corporate business.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one because I would say, I don't know that I recommend that as a strategy, as a leader, sink or swim. Good luck. How many companies actually help people to develop the skills to get them to that next level or that next opportunity. So I don't know that that would have changed anything for me necessarily, but I think we probably got it wrong sometimes, putting people in roles that they didn't have the background and they weren't able to navigate, which had to have been incredibly stressful, not a fun experience. So I mean, you got to read the room. I happen to be someone who said yes to every opportunity, jumped in. I never doubted myself. I don't know where that came from, if that was just an innate thing or my parents always really believed in me. And I thought, I can always give it a try. What's the worst that can happen? But in the environment that exists today, I think failure isn't an option. There are certain environments that are much more cutthroat. So I don't know if people are as comfortable taking those risks because what if I fail? What if I get fired? What if this doesn't work out? So I think we could do a much better job from a human resources perspective and a leadership perspective in preparing people for opportunities and helping set them up for success. I guess that all comes down to leadership, but you have a lot of issues in people then burning out. Hi, Steve Cadigan. Oh, my favorite. Thank you. Hi, Enrique. Steve, actually, if you don't know him, was the first CHRO of LinkedIn. And he's a dear friend, and he's a phenomenal human being.
I love that. Well, you have a little fan club here. I love it.
No, I was on Enrique's podcast too. He's a fellow outlier, also awesome. Chantal, love it.
Yeah, you got. I mean, that's a testament to you, though, and it makes sense knowing you and having had the many conversations that we've had. Now, it makes sense why you have a following like this. When you shifted you went from corporate to opening up your own business, starting your own thing. What was maybe one of the instances or skill sets or issues that you came across where you're like, okay, I can't have that same mentality I did before where I can take on anything, where I'm just going to push through this. I'm just going to, as we were saying before, hit your head against the wall until you figure it out. Was there something that it was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. This isn't the strategy that's going to work?
I don't know that there was one moment. I would say that for the first time in my life, I was really afraid. I had no one to write my paycheck. That was probably the biggest fear. I would say the fear around what if this doesn't work? And I was betting on me. And while that was kind of exciting and exhilarating on one hand, because I think I believe in myself, there was this element of what if I fail? And I do think the part that was really weird about this was the fact that you're in social. I have a 22-year-old Gen Z daughter who laughs when I do TikToks. Steve paved the way for me on TikToks. I had no idea what I was doing in any element of what I was doing. I had no idea, except for the content, except for the coaching, except for helping people negotiate what they're worth. And that I knew that's what I've been doing for decades. So that wasn't the question. It was a question of how do I bring this to life and how do I bring this to the world in a way that will be well received? How do I get up in front of now almost 10,000 people on LinkedIn and be me? Say, who cares about me? Like, what do I have to offer? Like, just this whole space was so new. And I think the hustle culture and what has been coming up for me a lot lately is around energy and doing a lot of energy work on myself and for myself. And this muscle that I've known for a long time, work hard, work harder. That's how you achieve success. I am not buying that anymore. But I lived it for 30 years and worked in highly male dominated industries where I grew up in the space that toughness was what showed how good you are, you know, and there was this idea that success doesn't have to only come through this relentless hard work and toughness. I often struggled with the word soft skills in a corporate environment, and I realized that they're actually hard skills. That's why most people avoid them.
Mm-hmm.
But I tended to be afraid to, in my early days for sure, use my softer side. Would that be accepted? And I think there's so much more knowledge and information out there today on emotional intelligence and mental health. And there's so many tools that are in front of us. It just takes brave people to challenge that burpees till you vomit kind of approach. And actually it came up, and the reason you mentioned it in the intro, I was just at a retreat, and one of the speakers was in the military, and was talking about his style of leadership, which was, you know, to be in your face, and you know, that toughness is what was expected. And like the conversation made me vomit. It was so hard to hear it and listen to it, because there's such a different way to do it. And in fact, it was about 50-50 men and women at this retreat. And one of the men said, after, you know, we were talking about the presentations, and he said, that is not manly. Like, that is not what society is looking for anymore. So it was really nice to see that it wasn't just a gender, that I wasn't the only one that had a little bad feeling hearing that. So yeah, I would just say I'm really learning to lean into these new muscles. And what does it look like to pull off the gas and go lay down and meditate middle of the day? Like, what? That would be unheard of. I was first in, I was last out. I would never, ever leave before my boss. I would never let my boss get there before me. It was, yeah, it's really learning a new vibe. And I'm not in corporate anymore. So I think as a leader in corporate, obviously my style changed a lot as a leader, and ensuring that I led with empathy and emotional intelligence, and being thoughtful about mental health and all of the good things. But in corporate today, I think I would be taking it to a whole new level.
Do you think it's that the definition of toughness, of grit, is misunderstood, or do you think it's a tool that we have been misusing as of in corporate and in these instances that you're explaining to us right now?
I like grit. I think grit, I mean, you can always have a positive and a negative perspective on both. Like, I think I'm pretty tough. And that comes from doing hard things and having hard experiences in life that have made me tough. But I think, I don't really know. Everyone is going to have their own interpretation. And I think having grit and working hard towards something. And if I think about what I've worked towards in my company, grit is a really positive thing, because I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going. Yes, I may take a mental health break. Yes, I may, do things differently and not compromise on my morning routine and not compromise on getting to the gym. But consistency, having a process and a strategy that I'm working towards, that's grit to me. Toughness means that I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to quit on me. And even if I did decide to pivot, so what? Like, who's judging? That doesn't make me weak. Yeah, I don't know. What is your perspective on those words?
I think that it has been not maybe. I think it has been, especially the term toughness. I think it got taken one direction, and it had been taken that direction for a long time, where you just keep moving no matter what. You push these feelings down. If like, give sports as an example. There was a great author, Steve Magnus, I think is his name, where he kind of redefined toughness, and he
Mhm.
laid it out really, really brilliantly. Where we used to ignore pain, we used to just push it
Mhm.
down. He was an ultra marathon runner. So they're running 250 miles. Like, absurd. It's gonna hurt. Your feet are gonna fall apart, and these types of things. And he studied the ones that were the most successful and the ones who, middle of the pack, were good. I don't want to say somebody who's an ultra marathon runner is not in shape and all this kind of stuff, and they're not tough, but the ones that didn't perform as highly. And one of the main differences is in his studies, he kind of studied their mental map as they were in the hardest aspects or the hardest part of their races. So he would talk to them, okay, you're at mile 100, your toenails are starting to fall off. How did you deal with that? And the ones that would perform higher, would perform better, they did not ignore the pain. Where that was probably, most people would have, 9 people out of 10 would have guessed that that was their strategy, just ignore it, just suck it up. He's
Yeah.
like, well, that's not the right strategy. I have to be completely aware of what's hurting, what's not hurting. I have to know what is going on so I can make the adjustments to push through it. So
Yeah.
if my foot hurts, if I have a toe that hurts, I have to change the way that I'm running. I can't just ignore it. I have to lean into it, figure out a strategy, do an analysis, typical business strategy, do a diagnosis of the problem, and adjust. And if I need to stop and take care of my feet, I do that. I don't just suck it up. And that's been kind of, again, previously, just keep going, get your head against, ignore the pain,
Grind
put your
harder.
head against the
Mhm.
wall, just keep
Yeah.
going. Like, like that's toughness, but it's not. It's leaning into it, it's understanding it, and creating a strategy to overcome it. And it was really well done. And I've really adopted that kind of interpretation of grit and determination and toughness and all that kind of stuff. It's not ignoring it and pushing through it just for the sake of doing it. It's figuring out a way to do it better to achieve the goal.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's such a perfect story to associate to this because it's really then more about adaptability and how you
Mhm.
adjust and to new challenges and pivot, right?
Mhm.
So that's not different and when it comes to leadership.
Mhm.
Um, one of the most critical skills you need as a leader is to know how to pivot and
Mhm.
adjust to challenges because they come every single day.
Mhm.
The World Economic Forum did a study that talked about what are the top 10 skills needed in the workforce by 2025. And adaptability was ranked amongst the top 10 skills. So leaders who embrace adaptability, flexibility, work-life balance, encourage our teams to
Mhm.
do the same, and foster environments where creativity and innovation can flourish is far more what's going to get us there rather than just pushing through and grinding harder and ignoring potential burnout. So, in your analogy, it was, of course, an actual physical
Mhm.
result, and in some cases, it is. You
Mhm.
have a physical reaction. So, I lived in Germany. I did expat assignment in Germany, and I came home with a herniated disc. That grinding harder, ignoring the
Mhm.
burnout, putting more and more pressure on myself. Actually, I had a physical response
Mhm.
and had no idea what that meant. I just thought I wasn't working out as much and that therefore my body was breaking down. I had no idea it had to do with stress. I had no idea that I was moving towards burnout. We
Mhm.
didn't talk about that back then.
Mhm.
So, and then the reason I realized that that's what it was about is the moment I landed back on US soil to come back and to come back home, literally the pain went away. And I was like doubled over, almost having to have it emergency surgery. Um, so it's so interesting how our bodies absorb
Mhm.
um, stress, and I really loved how you brought that forward. One other thing that came up for me too, Zach, was is the hustle culture and competition. So in this
Mhm.
speech this week at this retreat, it was about like beating the guy next to you and look at him, he's got he's at 350, you're still only at 200. you suck, he's winning, he's beating you. And that hustle culture also fuels competition, which is not effective from a leadership perspective. But leaders that prioritize collaboration over competition are far more likely to succeed. In fact, 5 times more likely to achieve a higher performance when you encourage collaboration over competition. I mean, that's just something else that comes up for me when I think about the culture concept.
Well, that's and that there's so many, and those analogies, it's funny how, I mean, and to Michelle's point too, there's a lot of analogies and similarities between how our bodies react to stress and how our minds react to stress, and how it accumulates and almost has like this breaking of the dam effect. And it's the same thing in business too. When you talk about competing, this is one thing that drives me nuts as well. And one of the reasons that we're doing the strategy core challenge is I went to a lot of business planning and business strategy events and workshops and this kind of stuff. And I went to one, and it was the most expensive one, with probably on paper, on social media, really, the most highly decorated individual running it. And it was a 1-day event. And so we were there for 10 hours, probably 6 or 7 hours of it was around the concept of defining and finding an enemy, and why that is the most important aspect, or one of the most important aspects. On that day, it seemed like the most important aspect of achieving your goal, of having a successful business and life and that kind of stuff, is finding somebody to compete against. And I'm not going to say I found the opposite of that, because there is instances where you have to compete. It is what it is. There's always going to be those instances. Nothing's black and white. Life is not black and white. The world's not black and white. However, if your focus is competing, not winning and succeeding, you're going to narrow your vision, and you're not going to focus on how you are going to best create success for yourself and your business. So I'll give an example, and it's between Apple, Microsoft, and Google. When Apple was kind of going through their renewal phase, they're kind of waiting for the next big thing. iPhones hadn't come out yet, and Microsoft and Google they're focused on each other, competing nonstop, right? It was like Chrome versus Explorer, and Google Docs versus, I don't even use the Microsoft version, Microsoft Office. And they were just going back and forth, trying to one up each other. They're focused on each other. Apple was focused on themselves and what they could best do to create a competitive advantage in these isolating mechanisms, and capture this market share and compete where they would be best at. And I don't know if anybody is ever watched the Three Ninjas growing up, like the little Tum Tum Rocky and them. But this one always stuck with me. The grandpa, he said, you never pick a fight unless you know you're going to win. Where you have these two giants going back and forth, competing against each other. Apple's focusing on themselves. And then before you knew it, a few years later, as those two were bickering over here, Apple, their market capitalization was worth more than both of theirs now combined. Because they focused on themselves. They focused on, how can I leverage our strengths? How can we create that blue ocean, so to speak? And they were focused on competing. So if you focus solely on competing and just beating the person next to you, you're less likely to be your best self, because you're not focusing on your strengths, your weaknesses. How can you leverage these things, and how can you bring those strengths to the market and into other people? So it's this weird concept, like we think that competing one-on-one or beating these specific individuals is so important, when a lot of times that focus is to your detriment.
Absolutely. So explain the enemy thing. So I see Michelle. Hi, Michelle. They said find the enemy, meaning
So
in the room or in terms of the business that you were in?
In terms of the business side, we weren't running around trying to find people to fight. It was
got it. I wasn't sure if it was a ninja concept at this. Okay, got you.
No, it wasn't. No, I wasn't. This wasn't like a sensei thing. And I'll call him out. It was at a Patrick Bet-David event. It was one of his business planning workshops, and he had his new book coming out. So I'm sure it was, which is Find Your Enemy or Define Your Enemy. I have it somewhere. The book's okay, but they focus that concept of find your enemy, set stretch goals, and that's a strategy. It's not a strategy. It's just it's something that motivates you to get up in the morning when you don't want to, right? It helps you do the extra workout, do the extra stuff. But it's not a strategy. It's not something that's innately going to set you up for success. Right. So that was kind of the concept.
That I have a visceral response to that. It's funny because I meet about 20-25 new people a week and
Mhm.
jump on random calls, virtual coffees, love meeting these people. And many of these people, I mean, not many of them, because I think my niche is quite unique, but I want to talk to other people who are doing salary negotiation because we can help each
Mhm.
other.
Mhm.
We the amount of people that I meet that in a theoretical term could
Mhm.
be seen as my competitor, I don't look at it that way. Neither do they. In fact, I met this woman, fell in love, Ashley Perret. She was one of the first people I met on LinkedIn. She has a company, Own Your Worth. Mine is Salary Bump, Know Your Worth. She
Mhm.
does talks about salary negotiation. She did a TED Talk on it. I mean, she is phenomenal.
Mhm.
And we were like, let's work together and start a podcast because why the heck not? So this energy and this space that I'm in is so much more about empowering
Mhm.
others. We all have special gifts. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. She's not everyone's cup of tea. So what she's putting out there, there will be different clients for her and different clients for me. And I want to help see her shine. She wants to see me shine. So
Mhm.
it's not about us. It's about the people who are drawn to us for whatever reason and how we're putting ourselves out there, how we're showing up online. I think that was another surprise. Steve is asking what my biggest surprise was. Um, I'm going to come back to that for in 1 second,
Mhm.
but like this surprise of how it feels to be my authentic self online. And I've been only really at this for just about a year on LinkedIn. Um, and I can't explain it, but I didn't really worry about being myself. There was
Mhm.
maybe in video, it was a little bit awkward at first to be myself, but like speaking my truth and um, sharing my thought leadership on LinkedIn, it's such a safe, beautiful, friendly environment that
Mhm.
you can totally be yourself. I think I've, grown into it even more, even more, even more. And when people say after they follow me on LinkedIn and then meet me, I say you're exactly as you show up on LinkedIn, which is like such a beautiful compliment because, yeah, why would you
Mhm.
want to be anything else but you? So, it's a process of finding your way. But what has surprised me the most about starting my business in terms of learning from my clients? So when I launched the salary bump, I I was doing lots of LinkedIn posts every day
Mhm.
posting, and I posted something one day about maybe it was 6 months ago about stop quietly quitting and start proactively asking for a
Mhm.
package. So when I tell you about this HR, the door of HR that I'm blowing up, um, I know that if someone isn't in a great place, if they came forward to me and wanted to negotiate a package proactively, I would say yes every single
Mhm.
day. Unless it was like a super duper high potential person where we were no desperate to have the person leave, which we should never be in that situation anyway.
Mhm.
Um, I would say yes all day long. And with the environment that we have today, companies will say yes. So I
Mhm.
was surprised how many clients actually came forward as a result of that post and how many double negotiations I'm doing. So I'm helping people negotiate after getting a layoff, increase their severance package, proactively ask for a package, and the negotiation with their new role. So that was an interesting surprise. I thought
Mhm.
I would be negotiating new salaries. I didn't connect those dots. It just sort of flowed into that. The other learning from my clients, oh gosh, Steve, it, um, first of all, they're all incredible, incredible humans, just just in their own right, and many of them don't know how incredible they are, and that's been a really beautiful experience to help them find um, their superpowers
Mhm.
and help them get in the driver's seat and just their openness to wanting to grow. I I honor that and I hold space for that. And I'm so grateful that they've chosen me to help them find their way. If I think of anything else, I'll come back to it, Steve. But it's been a really cool journey. I think the surprise that I realized about myself is on every other platform besides LinkedIn, I am the salary bump. And it was easier to show up on those platforms as the salary bump than it was me. As I've grown more and more, I actually realized, and more keynote speaking events have come my way, and community events, that I'm the brand. I thought the salary bump was the brand. So that was an interesting surprise for me. So actually I'm changing all my social media to be Keri-Lynne Shaw, which is kind of weird, because who the heck am I? I'm just some random girl from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Like it just feels very weird to think that or to say that. But the beauty of that was, I realized that I'm the brand, salary bump is a product, and that product needed a sister, and her name's the career bump. And actually watching the products evolve as a result of all these incredible conversations with these incredible people that I'm meeting, it's just sparking more ideas and opportunities and ways for this business to flow and be customized based on what the client's needs are. So lots of surprises, and I'm trying to just be in a really cool space with it and be like, all right, let's pivot. Let's pivot. Let's keep growing.
I love it. Well, you're representing Alberta proudly.
Ditto.
I will say that.
Ditto. Look at us. Two Albertans.
Yeah, here we go. Look, we're putting it on the map. I love it. But one thing that you said when you're working with your clients is that they don't even know, like almost they don't even realize their own potential and what their worth is, sort of thing. That's something that I see a lot too with individuals that come from, especially because we work with business owners, obviously, but with business owners, we see it a lot where they get to a certain point just from trying really hard and working hard and, working 18 hours a day, sort of thing, where they don't know what their potential is and what they're capable of because they've only tried things that one way, is just trying to run through the wall. And then they just think, I can't run through the wall, so I guess this is where I stop, as opposed to taking that step back, leaning into the discomfort, leaning into the pain, leaning into the fact that they're not able to get past a certain point and asking themselves, doing like a really deep diagnosis as to why they can't. And a lot of people avoid that. Yeah, a lot of people avoid that.
Yeah. The 18-hour days, again, it comes back on this hustle culture. That was me for a really long time. I think there's beauty in setting boundaries and beauty in consciously saying no. And what are you consciously saying yes to? The perfectionism, people pleaser culture. I think there's a lot to that story, that we're looking for so much external validation. I was one of those people for a really long time. And just, being able to look inside. The interesting thing around this 18-hour, beating my head against the wall, people don't necessarily know their worth or know what their superpowers are. But what I recognize is that some people will say, well, it's 9 to 5. I go home and I can leave it at work. And that's impossible. You cannot. I mean, you can't leave a toxic environment. You can't leave stress. It bleeds into all areas of your life. So one of the things we work on really early on in all of the engagements with my clients is digging into actually who you are, what you value, and how you can actually find a fulfilling job that matches your values and is something that you love, that you're really good at, and that you can make an impact on the world. These opportunities are out there, and giving them the platform to actually know that they can have that, and then digging into what their special gifts are and how you then marry that into your beautiful story in your talent reel. And when you're talking to future suitors and, kissing a lot of frogs, you're sharing this story, you're sharing your special gifts. And the more you talk about those, the more the universe brings those things to you. So you don't need to be in this spiral I got to just suck it up. I got to suck it up. I got to suck it up. I can't leave. It's not 1 year on my resume. That'll look bad. Or I can't leave because I'll never find another job that's going to pay me that much. Or I can't leave because I'm the sole, like there's pressure that we put on ourselves that is not real.
Mm-hmm.
There is pressure that is real and there's pressure that is not real. And a lot of it is made up in our heads. And, you know, it's helpful to have a sounding board to hold the mirror up to you and ask yourself, you know, ask people just get out of their own way because most of the time it's us that's in our own way.
Yeah. And there's something I'm not going to go in depth with it now, but there's a really there's a few questions that you do with your clients when they're just coming on board that really helps them kind of realize where their purpose is, whether their internal purposes, and where they would be most fulfilled, focusing and contributing to. But you have to go watch the podcast for that. That comes out on Tuesday for that, because I think it's brilliant. And there's a lot of those, you know, there's questions and these types of exercises out there, but it's really the way you explained and how you execute it is where the magic is. So I'm excited for everybody to hear that. But when it comes to this hustle culture thing, it's one of the things that I think part of the thing that drives it is there's a lot of, like, we call it like Sunday quotes out there where they sound cool and they get a lot of likes on LinkedIn and sometimes, but they don't innately mean anything. So we're going to I'm going to bring up some quotes and we're just going to talk through them really briefly. And I want you just to decide hustle or bust. Is it a good quote that could innately, if you dug into it, mean something positive and long-term success, or is it kind of silly and doesn't really actually mean anything? Sound good?
Yeah. I'm nervous.
I think there's like 6 of them. You say you're nervous?
Is it like a pass fail kind of thing?
You're the teacher here. You're the one that's saying whether it's pass or fail.
Oh gosh. Okay,
It's up
go.
to you.
I'm ready.
Get it over with. All right. So it says by Don Zimmer, what you lack in talent can be made up with desire, hustle, and giving 110% all the time. Hustle or bust. Is this good or bad?
Oh, there's parts of it that are okay. I don't think you need to be the most talented on the court to do incredibly well, but having passion, having grit, and working hard, there ain't nothing wrong with that. I don't agree with 100%, 110% all the time, but you know, look at a Kobe Bryant. How much did he practice, right? So it was about practice, and he was hungry and he went after it because he knew that the more I worked at it and the more I practiced, the more I'm going to build that muscle. So I do think that there is a time and a place for this quote, but there is no way anyone can give 110%. First of all, the max is 100. So let's be realistic. There isn't a percentage higher than that. And all of the time is a bust. You can't possibly, you need time to recover. And that would be the same for Kobe Bryant and, you know, in that analogy as well.
Yeah, no, he recovers. He invests in recovering, both mentally and physically. But the part of the quote, I mean, I totally agree with you. You can make up for it in lack of talent in a specific area with upfront hustle and desire. However, part of that is you can't go 100% all the time. You need to back off, and you need to make sure you're even going in the right direction, because sometimes people put their head down, they're hustling so hard, and then they look up and they're like, oh crap, I'm not where I wanted to be. So you need that time to kind of step back. So I completely agree with that. But I think for the most part, people would read, like, the normal, like, people, not normal people, we're normal people, but people would probably read this who aren't analyzing quotes right now, and they would see, like, I just got to give 110% all the time. Like, that's what they would probably focus on.
Yeah.
Because it's simple too.
You want to hear a funny story? So related to this, I had, like I said, I've been on LinkedIn for about a year, and I was feeling really fatigued. I was on LinkedIn way too many hours a day. It was fun at first, and it was so interesting and reading everyone's stuff, but I was getting bored of my own stuff, getting bored of reading everyone else's stuff, trying to engage on everyone else's stuff. And it was like a slog, absolute slog. The moment I let off the gas and actually took a step back, my LinkedIn went bananas. Wild. 3 posts, 3 weeks in a row, like between the three of them, 1 million views. So something happened, and it was the moment I took a breath, the moment I trusted the process, and just reminded myself, I do not need to be on LinkedIn all day long every day for things to flow, even though that's what the master classes and the experts say. The moment I released it and let it go was the moment that it actually took off to a level that I had never taken off to. So that's not to say I still don't post every day. That's not to say I'm still not engaged, but I'm putting different boundaries around it and asking myself, what does it really mean to have 1 million views? Is that, how important is that? Is it converting into clients? Is it like driving more clients? And if the answer is no, then like, relax, Kale. Like, it's not, the world is not going to end if you don't post on LinkedIn today. So that was, I think, a cool example of actually really letting off the gas. Oh, I lost your voice, Zach. I can't hear you.
Because I muted myself.
Okay.
When you step off the gas and you give yourself that space, you have the ability to then be more creative. Because if you're here, you're here. This is all you can see, and you don't see outside of that. And your ability to be creative and see trends and identify these types of things and how to utilize them and leverage things in different ways that you haven't before. It gets more and more difficult the more entrenched in the weeds, focused, stressed, all these things that you are. It just doesn't breathe creativity. And this today, even we have clients in the home improvement industry, you look at that, it's more of a classical market environment where it's the road to success takes time. It takes a long, you win by being bigger kind of thing. It's like a classical environment where there's parts of that, even in that market. Now you look at how softwares and technology is changing. You can't take that approach to all aspects of your business. So if you're just hustling all the time, you're going to miss that. And so your competitor is going to beat you because they have a better CRM. They're getting to prospects quicker. Their project management tools are better than yours. So they're getting better customer satisfaction ratings. Now you look worse compared to that. And if you're always hustling, you miss those opportunities. Even when you've innately been successful the last 20 years doing one thing, you have to be able to give yourself that space to see things, to see the bigger picture and catch those trends and be creative. So absolutely love that. All right. Success is walking from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. Winston Churchill.
Success is walking from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. I am going to say that is I am a big fan. I don't believe in the word failure. I think at this same event where we were talking about vomiting and burpees, there was another woman that presented, and she blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. It was the best presentation of the whole week. And she said, I make failure my bitch. And I loved it so much. Hi, James. I loved it so much because I have never seen failure as a negative. I have always seen if something is going off the rails, being aware enough to know, like, all right, let me either pull back, let me, put the brake on, pull off the gas, put the clutch in. What do I need to do to kind of get my wheels back? Obviously, you know how cold it is where we're from, and sandbags in the back of the car, and like I've had a lot of those experiences. So I never saw failure as failure. I always saw it as an opportunity to learn and grow. And if you're not taking risks, you can't be a risk taker and try new incredible things without it not working. It's not going to work every single time, but I don't see it as failure. So I think just, this optimism of saying, like, I'm going to keep going until it feels really good. So yeah, way to go, Winston. Love it.
When you just say Winston, he doesn't sound as cool as he really was.
I'm going to say just Winston. Yeah, we're on a first name basis now.
Yeah, an old friend of mine. No, I think the failure if we look at our own evolution, like especially our cognitive evolution, because that's been much slower than societally and economically and technologically, much, much, much slower in some cases. But we associate failure as an absolute. And back in the day, really, again, not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, failure meant loss of status. And status back then was very, very hard to gain back once lost.
Mm.
Where now everybody's attention spans are so much shorter. There's so much more opportunity. There's so many more kind of playgrounds, so to speak, to play in, that it's not an absolute. Like failure is not an absolute. Not every, I don't want to say every, but most vast majority of people who are inherently successful have one or more stories of when they have failed.
Yeah.
So it's like as humans have evolved and our society has evolved, the term failure it no longer means absolute. At
Yeah.
least in some cases, unless we need to figure out a different word somewhere between failure and success somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's like that term failure is just not what it meant before. It's not an absolute thing.
There's such a fear around it too, right? So there's a fear around
Yeah.
failing, and that then people hide stuff and then they lie, and then it turns into, you shove something under the rug. Like I've seen it so many times in corporate where you're so afraid of failing, you're so afraid of getting it wrong that this could be career limiting for me, that you make up a story around it and you don't maybe come forward and clean. Like it always comes back to bite you. So the sooner you bring it forward, like there's a lot of fear around that, unfortunately.
Reed Hastings, the former, I guess now CEO of Netflix, in his book,
Netflix. Mhm.
New Rules. What did I say? Did I say Netflix?
No, yeah, yeah. I
Oh,
have a copy of the book in my
oh,
cupboard.
no rules. Yeah, it's a great
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
But there was a story in there where he talked about somebody who he hired, and they were in charge of, I believe it was creating or starting their initial, like their kids section or the kids, their kids, yeah, vertical in the Netflix platform. And I guess it completely bombed right away. It cost them a couple $1 million at least. And he had an interview with somebody, and they asked, "Are you going to fire whatever?" I can't remember what her name was. Are you going to fire? He's like, "Why would I do that? I just spent $4 million, however much money it was, training her." Like it was very much like they truly believe in order for them to be, for the people there to be creative, to outmaneuver the competition and to continue to innovate and move forward, you have to be so committed to providing that safe place to fail, and then creating processes and principles to allow for learning afterwards or to
Yeah.
promote learning afterwards. So it was really interesting case study.
They also sunshine failures, right? So you get up on stage and you talk about how what you worked on failed,
Yeah.
which is interesting and great in theory, but they also have an interesting fire culture as well. So
Yeah.
um, it's a
Kind of a
we could tweak that a
Mhm.
little bit.
Mhm.
Um, it's pretty hardcore.
Yeah, and then another example that is Bridgewater. Ray Dalio. Bridgewater has a similar kind of radically open-minded, that it takes a special thickness of skin to be in a place like that. But yeah, and there's yin and yangs to everything. But I thought that was a good example,
Yeah.
case study of this particular idea. All right, some hustle, who's unknown, whoever that is. Some hustle for respect, some hustle for love, other hustle for truth. We all hustle to survive.
Some hustle for respect, hustle, love. I don't know that we need to hustle to survive. Um, I
I
see.
think.
I
Go ahead.
see more. I have more of a philosophy around thriving,
Mhm.
and I don't see hustle and thriving necessarily in the same sentence. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, that I think that's very similar to what I was going to say. It's like we say, if we're in survival mode, it's because our one or more of our basic needs aren't met.
Yeah.
And for like we're very lucky where we are. I won't say most people, but a lot of us, we have at least we have put ourselves in a position where more often than not those basic needs are met. So that survival piece, the hustle to survive piece, is not. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's not necessarily a focus. If you put that, if you instill that concept into somebody's head, they're always thinking from the opposite of abundance. They're always just trying to claw, right? And they're always at the brink of losing everything. So they're fighting not to lose rather than the fight to win. And
Yeah.
it's an interesting kind of concept. So is this one a
Yeah.
bust?
This one's a bust for me.
Good. Yeah, me too. We're on the same page there. I like this one. I remember this one. You can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have.
I mean,
Maya
come
Angelou.
on. It's Maya Angelou. Like, I mean, you can't give me a quote from her and not ever be a bust. I think she's just so wise. Creativity is interesting. I never saw myself as a creative person.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I think about it, the more I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more it's like a muscle that you're building as well. The more you try, the more you put yourself out there,
Yeah.
the more comfortable you start to feel. So yes, that's a beautiful one.
Yeah, this is a great one. I had a mentor he didn't tell me this quote. This was in a blog that he wrote. He said creativity is like a blossoming tree, because you have your trunk where you see your initial spark of creativity, kind of like me. I didn't really see myself as a creative person in a lot of instances, but then I worked on it and I had that trunk, and then all of a sudden, because I did that, I had all these branches sprouting out, and the branches had branches, and then they had leaves, and that's it was a kind of a cool metaphor for building that initial foundation of your own creative identity.
Yeah.
I
Love
like that
that.
one. I'm skipping some. All right. If you set your goals ridiculous, James Cameron, if you set your goals ridiculously high and it's a failure, you will fail above everyone else's success.
You will fail above everyone else's success.
This is like that shoot for the stars, you'll at least land on the moon kind of thing.
Yeah. Again, it just comes back to the word failure that maybe is rubbing me the wrong way. But
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I don't compare myself to other people, so I don't really care about everybody else's success.
Mm-hmm.
But shoot high, go for it. Like, you got nothing to lose.
There's like your vision and your purpose. I definitely think that should be a stretch. Like you should stretch that goal. Like you should challenge yourself. But if we're talking, like, I always come back to like the tangibles. Like if I'm working with my team, or if I'm working with one of our clients to put a strategy together, and they're setting just a bunch of these wildly unattainable, throwing a dart at a wall stretch goals just because they read a Jack Welch quote that said shoot high. Like that's not a strategy, and that's not being realistic. I like to think more of like, let's set proximate objectives that we can hit based on an analysis sort of thing. But if like you said, if we're just talking about our life goals and our vision of our business and that kind of stuff, I think we should shoot high. But when it comes to like tangibles, I don't know about that whole shooting for the stars thing.
What I really appreciate about what you said is that if you think about it in context of a corporate environment, you also want to give your people something realistic that they can attain, because then you just feel like crap all the time. Like, these are they all know these are unrealistic goals, and then when we don't hit them, we feel terrible. So why not set realistic goals, and then perhaps you stair step it, but people still need to feel good about that. Not to mention, depending on how your bonus is structured, they're like, "Oh, great, give me a 30% bonus, but we never hit our targets," and so you basically you're screwing me on purpose. It's kind of crappy. Yeah, no, I appreciate what you said.
Yeah. It's an interesting. I use an analogy when I'm challenging individuals, or I'm challenging some of our classes and stuff on this. Is I give the example of the moon landing, when JFK gave that great speech of we're going to put a man on the moon before the Russians and all this kind of stuff, and he made it seem like it was going to be such a stretch goal. It was going to be this impossible feat that we're going to band together as a nation and we're going to accomplish. And it accomplished that, where it brought the nation together, brought us together. But a lot of people don't know, and still don't know, that months beforehand, their engineers gave him a plan of like, no, we could do it. Like they did a diagnosis, and they were like, no, this is our weakness right now. We don't have as big of jet engines as Russia does. So that's where we need to focus and put our resources. But everything else, this is a proximate goal. I think it was within 10 years. Like, this is a proximate objective that we could accomplish.
Yeah.
However, his execution and speech made it again, and even up until now, some people don't even think we went, which I don't know, who knows. But with the analogy, that was actually a proximate goal that was seen as this impossible feat that we achieved and overcame. But
yeah,
they had a plan already. So that's an example that I give when people are like, no, you should shoot for the impossible, and then maybe you'll get it. Well, good. Or you could have a thought out plan of how you're going to do it and execute.
I like that better. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. But Kerri, I knew this was going to happen. I was like, we're going to keep it at 45 minutes. And then we just got talking, you got talking, and I love listening to you. And I'm sure everybody else does too. But go check out this coming Tuesday, her podcast comes out, Summit Chasers Podcast, in the Summit Chasers Productions YouTube channel, and the Summit Chasers Podcast everywhere else you can listen to podcasts, and you can get to know her a little bit better, what she's doing with her clients a little bit better, her philosophies around negotiating and climbing that. I don't want to say climbing the ladder because that has a negative connotation, but finding the success for yourself that you know that you deserve and are capable of. Let's put it that way. But Kerri, thanks so much again for being on here. And thank you everybody who showed up. X absolutely crushed it again for us. Everybody on LinkedIn that joined, thank you so much. Kerri, do you have any last words of wisdom for everybody?
This was so much fun. No, it was just a pleasure. Thank you so much. The topic was cool. It's a little different than what I normally talk about. So thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure both times.
Pleasure's
and thanks
been all
to
mine.
for connecting us.
It's Adrina's the connector. Absolutely. She's very good. She got the green thumb of connecting. So she's doing some amazing things with her podcast in the nonprofit space, and for us as well at Summit Chasers. So we're very thankful that she's here. But again, thank you, and thank you again for everybody for being here. And until next time, everybody, keep chasing your next summit.